As you might imagine, I'm a pretty ritualized person, especially with my morning routine. I like to wake up when it's still dark outside, sit in silence with my eyes closed, sipping a cup of coffee. Then I log on to lead our Zoom minyan, and finally, after minyan, I go for a walk in our run or a walk in our neighborhood, and Celebration Park, which is a 3 to 5 minute jog from our house. Every morning while on my run, I see a particular pickup truck with one very low-key bumper sticker on its rearview mirror, which reads, "Faith plus nothing equal forgiveness." I have the same reaction to this sticker every time I see it. I sigh, and then I shake my head in disbelief. Now, I have no doubt that the person who owns this vehicle is a good and nice person. I simply can't understand the concept that states that all you need is faith in God. What about teshuvah, repentance, making amends for whatever it is for which you need forgiveness? This concept that no action is needed on my part, only faith, and faith is something in which I confess to being somewhat less than perfect, this is foreign to me. Indeed, this to me is one of the essential differences between my understanding of Judaism and my very limited understanding of Christianity. If you have ever attended a funeral officiated by Rabbi Rothman, when it comes time for the kivurah, or the burial, when we're going to shovel dirt into the grave, he explains this ritual by introducing it and saying something to the effect of that Judaism is a system of mitzvot, of deeds, of rituals that animate our lives. They give voice to our feelings, to our emotions. They also give us guidance as to the actions we should be taking at a particular time. In other words, Judaism is primarily about the deeds that we do. Not to say that there is no faith component, but we emphasize the deeds. Christianity, and I take this from the BBC website page on religions and the basics of Christian beliefs. Christians believe in justification by faith, that through their belief in Jesus as the Son of God and his death and resurrection, they can have a right relationship with God whose forgiveness was made once and for all through the death of Jesus. In other words, they emphasize faith. I say this not to denigrate someone else's beliefs. If their beliefs lead them to lead a good life, that's wonderful. I say this to elucidate our differences. But it is precisely this difference which led me to shake my head in disbelief when I was preparing for this week's Parsha and came upon the following. If we recall, at the end of last week's Parsha, Yosef was in jail interpreting the dreams of the butler and the baker, and he foresees the butler's return to his position. Yosef appeals to him, "Remember me when all is well with you again, and do me the kindness of mentioning me to Pharaoh so as to free me from this place." However, his hopes were dashed, and the Torah tells us the butler did not remember Yosef, he forgot him. As our Parsha then opens, and it was the end of 2 years, Rashi quotes the Midrash Bereshit Rabbah criticizing Yosef for his self-reliance. Because Yosef relied on the butler to remember him, he was incarcerated for another 2 years. As it is said, praiseworthy is the man who made the Lord his trust and did not turn to the haughty. I must admit, this comment made me feel rather uncomfortable. Really? Does trust in God preclude human effort? Does Judaism deride taking responsibility? Is human action demonstrative of a lack of faith? What came to my mind, in contrast, was the scene at the Exodus when the Israelites were fleeing Egypt and they came to the Sea of Reeds. In front of the Israelites was the sea. Behind them was the approaching Egyptian army. They were trapped. They cried out to Moshe, "Was it for want of graves in Egypt you brought us to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us, taking us out of Egypt?" Moshe responded, "Have no fear. Stand by and witness the deliverance which the Lord will work for you today." But what was God's response? God said, "Why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to go forward." In other words, you can't wait on God to act. You must start the action yourself. Start the journey. and then God will help you along. But you must take action. In fact, the Talmud tells us, Ein somchin al hanes. We do not rely on miracles. In other words, we must make things happen for ourselves. Moreover, this interpretation of the Yosef story seems to be in conflict with the Yosef in the story who credits God many times over for his ability to interpret dreams. Surely you are not saying that this Yosef lacked faith in God. But perhaps we can read this story somewhat differently. If we read the story as one in which Yosef was correctly and appropriately proactive, and yet a story in which God remains highly present. After all, the butler does recall Yosef at seemingly the exact right moment when Pharaoh has a baffling dream that all the experts cannot decode. At that moment, the butler remembers Yosef and brings him to Pharaoh's attention. I must make mention today of my offenses, he says. Once Pharaoh was angry with his servants and placed me in custody. A Hebrew youth was there with us, and when we told him our dreams, he interpreted them for us, telling each of us the meaning of his dream. Thereupon, Pharaoh sent for Yosef. So contrary to the Midrash, we can say Yosef's legitimate request to the butler was indeed honored by the butler with perfect timing. Had the butler mentioned Yosef immediately upon the butler's release from prison, his name would probably have been received without any special attention. But when Pharaoh seems disturbed by his dreams, Yosef was the right person at the right time. In the final analysis, Yosef did everything he could do to gain his release from jail, but it was God who aligned all the pieces, ensuring a good outcome by having Pharaoh be visited with strange dream. As Rabbi Sachs of blessed memory put it, time passes, and with the utmost improbability, Pharaoh too has dreams, and none of his magicians or wise men can interpret them. Itself odd, since dream interpretation was a specialty of the ancient Egyptians. 2 full years passed. The words with which our Parsha begins are the key phrase. What Yosef sought to happen, happened. He did leave prison. He was set free, but not until 2 full years had passed. Between the attempt and the outcome, something intervened. That is the significance of the lapse of time. Yosef planned his release, and he was released, but not because he planned it. His own attempt ended in failure. The steward forgot all about him, but God did not forget about him. God, not Yosef, brought about the sequence of events, specifically Pharaoh's dreams, that led to his release. Rabbi Sachs continues, that is the paradox of the human condition as understood by Judaism. On the one hand, we are free. No religion has so emphatically insisted on human freedom and responsibility. Adam and Eve were free not to sin. Cain was free not to kill Abel. We make excuses for our failures. It wasn't me. It was someone else's fault. I couldn't help it. But these are just that, excuses. It isn't so. We are free and we do bear responsibility. What then is the proper balance between faith and human initiative? It seems to me that Hanukkah, the holiday we just finished celebrating yesterday, serves as a good example. On the one hand, we celebrate the Maccabees, the brave Jewish resistance fighters who defeated the Assyrian Greek army. But we can get too caught up in the thinking that it was nothing but their grit, determination, and skill. We can look at our own lives and see nothing but our own achievements and see our own achievements as exclusively our own. But to counterbalance that, we say Hallel every day of Hanukkah. We give praise to God to realize that there is so much over which we have no control. There is so much more that contributes to our success than we can even imagine, must let influence. So I wish for you much success and achievement in the year to come. May it be a year in which we return to a more normal existence, and may we grow and become everything that we work for and endeavor to be. And may we always be thankful for the myriad of blessings that God has bestowed upon us that enabled our efforts to be successful. Shabbat Shalom. We will turn back in our